Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 328 of the Stacey West podcast. I am Ben. Joining me this week is Chris. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
Oh, of course I'm well. We won and we played really well. So, yes, I'm very, very well, thank you.
Absolutely.
And also, and I know Gary's not on the podcast today. There's one reason why Gary's not on the podcast today, and that's because he's hungover. This was planned. He expected to be hungover, which is why you and I were scheduled in for this one, because he was out last night partying at some Halloween thing. I was invited. I decided not to go. I was happy to have a night in, but a spontaneous poker night was arranged. So I ended up playing poker night instead, and I won. So rather than spending loads of money going to a party, I actually ended up with a profitable evening. So football, followed by that, was a rather enjoyable Saturday for me. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, this is the third day in a row that we've sort of spent together as well, isn't it?
No, I'm so sorry about that.
No, Friday, Chris and I had the pleasure of going to London in a somewhat tangentially football-related activity, given who our FA Cup
that is very much
it's tangential, isn't it? Yeah,
connection. Yes.
No, we went to the Taskmaster Live experience, which I thought was an excellent day, and I won a prize. I won a duck.
You were the best of the worst.
I'm the best of the worst, which I'm sure many of our listeners will agree upon. But had a fantastic day down in London, and just really good. And then it was capped off by, we even saw Mr. Beaston yesterday. It was a very enjoyable day all round, I think, wasn't it? It was getting to the ground and the usual routine of a cider and a curry jacks, and then seeing the lineup come through. And it's something that we talk about a little bit now. The lineup coming through doesn't worry us as such anymore. Doesn't really give us any apprehension. There's just a little bit of excitement as to who's going to be there. But before we get into that, actually, I will give Stu, the person who does all the clips, I will give him a little bit of a clip to do, because we sometimes forget. But today we are obviously talking about the Stockport game, and then we'll be looking ahead to Northampton a little bit later on. So there you go, Stu. That one's for you. But yeah, the lineup coming out. 4 changes from Tuesday night, and I think a little bit of a reaction mainly, but probably a necessary one. But one really big surprise was to see Lewis Monsman's name on the team sheet to start.
Massive surprise. Delighted to see him in the team. We all love Lewis Monsman. We all know how hard he must have had to work to get himself back to this point. I'll be honest, always wanted this to happen.
Yep.
Deep down, did I realistically think it was going to? Considering his role in the squad so far this season, from what we've seen, I wasn't expecting it. I thought Tom Hamer would keep his place. Mm-hmm. I don't think Tom's done a lot wrong. I think he might feel a little bit hard done by to be dropped. But from Lewis's perspective and from the fans' perspective, I think it was absolutely brilliant to see him in the team. We're going to touch on performances later, I imagine, because there's actually quite a lot to talk about in regard to Stockport. We don't want to go too over the top with praise, but there was loads of positives from this game, and some individuals that deserve a lot of credit. Lewis absolutely justified his selection as well, didn't he, in the game? We'll come on to that later. But yeah, that was the big talking point. There were some others as well, of course. Bailey Cadamartri coming back in to start. Mm-hmm. And again, we'll touch on performances, but I think that was his best all-round 90 in a Lincoln City shirt so far this season. Well, not quite 90, but all-round performance. Mm-hmm. Of course, there was also Rico Hackett coming in for a start at left wing-back, which was great. Gave us some good balance on that side. And then Conor McGrandles coming back in for a start as well.
Yeah, although there was a slight amount of irony in Conor McGrandles coming back to replace Ethan Hamilton. And then Ethan Hamilton kind of had to come on shortly afterwards for reasons we will get into. But I thought it was we've said it before, that there aren't any weak lineups for Lincoln City at this point. But that felt like a very strong statement. Starting with Bailey Cadamartri. I think there's been maybe an undercurrent of people where they think, have we seen the best of Bailey Cadamartri just yet? And I would probably argue that we hadn't, despite the fact, he's obviously got a few goals for us already. As has been pointed out, he was on a par with Joe Taylor at this point in Joe Taylor's, Lincoln City career. But we hadn't, I think it was fairly fair to say that we hadn't seen the best of Bailey so far. But I think he's started to prove that we're seeing the best of him now. But let's get into the game. I mean, obviously, first thing, well, I think we started the game fairly brightly. I think we forced a few early corners, which was quite a surprise. I think, if I remember, it's probably 3 in the first 5 minutes, if I remember correct.
It was something like that. We had 11 in the whole game. I think 8 in the first half. It was really, really good. And the thing is that, as much as there might be some criticism around me there was early in the game, I've got to make one of these count. I think it's just a really good indication that you're playing the game in the right part of the pitch, isn't it? When you're having that many corners early doors.
Yeah,
it was a really bright start. We pressed them incredibly high. I always like us when we press high. I appreciate you can't do that against every single team because different teams offer different threats. But I always like to see it when we're able to do that. I thought we did it absolutely brilliantly. PPDA was all the way down at 5 for the first 15 minutes. So again, it just aligns with the eye test, doesn't it? We played well. We was on the front foot. We were knocking on the door. We had a couple of shots as well. It's not like we were the criticism against Crawley in the first half. So we did lots of things right, but we couldn't get a bloody shot away. But against Stockport, we played brilliantly in that first few minutes, and then they scored a goal.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a corner, I think, just before Stockport scored where it came across and House got a touch on it. From where we were sat, it didn't look like House had got a touch on it, and Monsma was sort of running in behind it, and everyone just thought, why didn't Monsma just get his foot on it? And then you look back at the replay, and it's something that we will touch on again shortly, but when you look back at the replay, you see the House's touch took it well away from Lewis, and unfortunately, he didn't have a chance of getting on the end of that one. But the Stockport goal. In real time, me and you both thought the same thing because we've discussed this, and it looked to me that Sean Rowan and maybe Rico Hackett had just switched off a little bit and allowed far too much space. And it seemed to go almost in slow motion. Ball comes across, and Aliofi? He got on the end of it and just pokes it home. But when you look back at the replay, it's actually a really good goal.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same as you in the game because we started really well. What were we looking for off the back of Tuesday as fans? We were looking for a really positive start, a better performance. Obviously, a positive result was something that we were absolutely desperate for as well. A lot of us were, but there's a long way to go in the game at that point. And up until that point, we'd seen everything we'd hoped to. Yeah. It just felt, oh no, that's kind of come against the run of play, and it felt soft. And then, as you've mentioned, looking at it back again multiple times, we realised, firstly, what a pass. What a brilliant pass by Nick Powell. I think it was really quite fortunate for us that he went off not long after that, injured.
Yeah.
Because he's a really strong player at this level, really technical player, can create something out of nothing, as we see. Because the thing is, most players in League One with the ball in that position are either going to take a touch to cut inside on their right foot, or they're going to play the ball in with their left foot. And all of our defenders' kind of body positions were perfectly fine for those two eventualities. Because he's taken the pass early effectively with his right foot and bent it round with the outsides, it's just really difficult to defend against. And then that then allows Aliofi to come onto the ball at a good angle. And it looks slow motion in real time. But again, looking back, it was just a really accurate finish right into the bottom corner. Because it's come right from one side to the other. George Wickens in goal, he's got to get across from one side of his goal to his other. By the time he's got to the other side, the ball's already coming back across. It's difficult to get your feet sorted out.
Yeah, it's a really good finish.
It's a
really
good goal.
It's
a good goal. And at the time, it felt annoying, frustrating, disappointing, and I kind of felt just for a minute it really dampen the atmosphere at Sincilbank, understandably so. It buoyed the Stockport fans, who, by the way, were superb for the full 90 minutes.
100%.
And they were impeccably behaved as well, which is something we, of course, didn't see last week with Birmingham.
Yeah.
So ultimately, that was that.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up, actually, because obviously you and Gaz mentioned about the Birmingham fans last week, and it was kind of the opposite. It was, a bit of aggro, and they weren't necessarily the loudest fans in the world. Stockport, I heard beforehand that they'd sold out their allocation, and I thought, well, that seems a bit surprising. But no, they were vociferous from minute one, and I think, they were a really good set of fans, gave the team a good backing. But yeah, unfortunately, they got the early opportunity to go wild. And we've said it before, like when you have an instance like that, you just kind of have to admit that's a really good goal, and there wasn't a huge amount that could have been done. I don't think. No. I don't think anyone was particularly out of position. It just looked like that from where we were. It was just unfortunate, but yeah, really good goal. Then next big moment of the half came, and I think when this happened, I think maybe a few people around me, and I don't know if you felt the same way, but when it happens, you go, oh, okay, well, that's just another thing to put on the crap sandwich of the potential afternoon. But Ethan Arahan goes down after what is actually a really heavy challenge. The ball is won, but the trailing leg comes in, and when you look back on the replays on the highlights, you can see just how nasty that looks. Because if Ethan doesn't lift his foot up, he breaks his ankle. It's as simple as that.
There's definitely potential for that, yeah. And at the time, it looked a heavy challenge. It's only, and it's often the case, in fairness, it looks worse on the replay, doesn't it? But you can see what's happening more clearly as well. It's a strong challenge. I think it says a lot that he went down straight away. We know Ethan at times knows how to play those sort of situations positively in a game management perspective. But the fact that Ethan Hamilton was stripped off pretty much as soon as Ethan went down kind of sent a message. But of course, that meant that we lost our player that's been ever present so far this season, someone who we were desperate to hold on to in the summer, and rightly so, of course. So it felt, oh no, such a good start. Now we're a goal down, and arguably our best player is now injured. What happens next? What happened next was brilliant, to be honest. Absolutely brilliant. So Conor McGrandle slots in at the DM role, replaces Ethan, and slots in there seamlessly. Didn't put a foot wrong all afternoon. I thought Conor McGrandle was utterly superb in there. Ethan Hamilton looked just like a fully fit Ethan Hamilton before his injury. And to be honest, I think the biggest thing for me was the reaction, because we mentioned on our podcast on Thursday, me and Charlie, when we were discussing the Crawley game, in that it felt really bad, and the second half was really poor. First half was okay, but the second half was really poor, and it was mainly poor because of our reaction to going to a goal down. So I kind of felt at that moment in time, we've just got to react really well. This is where we're going to see what we're made of. It showed what is our character now. Have we effectively learned from Tuesday? And my goodness me, did we learn from Tuesday? It was a polar opposite reaction to going a goal down. I actually think that maybe that 3 or 4 minutes where Ethan was injured allowed us to make the substitution. Maybe
you just regroup a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, it took that maybe kind of franticness out of the game. But ultimately, credit to the lads, credit to the management team. I saw on the sideline, Michael was actively kind of telling us, just stay calm, got loads of time, it's fine, keep going, just stay calm. And they did. And our performance from, well, to be honest, before that as well, before the goal, for the whole 45 minutes as a whole, but particularly from going the goal down to a half time, was almost faultless, honestly, almost faultless. So I don't want to go through millions of stats, but this absolutely was our best half of football in terms of dominating an opposition, because we were superb. So the overall possession stats were higher than they have been in most games this season. For us, of course, Crawley being a massive outlier, we had more of the ball compared to our opposition there than we normally do. But our average this season is just under 40%. It was about 50-50 in the first half. But if we only count passes where Michael says it counts, which is in the opposition half, so this is the whole field tilt metric that we've been speaking about before,
And
this
you're
is
bringing
just a
your
real
spreadsheet.
indication. Yeah, it works. Yeah, it's nice to have the spreadsheet now. It was a lot less work this week than it was previous weeks to try and work it out, I'll tell you. But if we only include possession that we had in their half compared to possession they had in our half, despite the overall possession stats being about 50-50 in the first half, it was a 70-30 split in our favour. That's what it's all about. That's the what Michael means when he wants the game played in the right part of the pitch. That's what we mean when we're not that bothered about having the ball all the time. We want to make sure that we have it in the right areas of the pitch. The game is being played in their half. And it was for 70% of that first half, the ball was in their half with us in control of it. And that is what we want, obviously. Yeah. And we got the just rewards for that after loads of corners, quite a few key big chances. There was 5 big chances in the game for us, according to FOTMob.
I mean, I think we had some really good, really clever set pieces as well. I think there was one corner in particular. It caught Stockport's defence off guard and played it out to Ethan Hamilton, who basically was in all of the space and unfortunately just blazed it over a bit. But it showed the intent that we have, and I think watching the game, you always thought that Stockport had a mistake in them. Like, there was no. It didn't feel like last weekend, for example. Like Birmingham, they're well drilled. They're obviously fantastic players, and we've probably spoken more about how good Birmingham were at some point than most other teams. But you always felt that there was something in there with Stockport, and you never felt out of the game. And the fact that when the goal did come, it felt so deserved. And to be fair, I was almost disappointed not to go in 2-1 up, and we'll obviously talk about that, in a second. But let's talk about that goal, because obviously it's a mistake from their goalkeeper, but the mistake is forced by Ben House running in, putting the pressure on him. He then panics, mate. It felt like he panicked a little bit, passes it out, picked up by Tendai, and their defense just switched off. Like, it was for both of our goals. It seemed like their defense completely switched off, because that cross, it's one of the best crosses I've seen all season. Like, it was just inch perfect for where he knew Ben House needed to be. Ben House is in acres of space. He's got nobody around him whatsoever. He's left his man. His man's just watching the ball come across, and then by the time he turns around, watches where it's landed, he goes, "Oh, that's on Ben House." He said, "Oh, that's in the back of the net." It was, it was just a really, really good goal. And I think the way that he managed to, he could have put it in at the near post, but he did exactly what happened with Stockport's goal and with Wicken's. The keeper's coming across to watch the cross. Ben House puts it on the other side of him. He can't shift his weight, and it goes in the bottom corner. Really clever header, and yeah, it felt like we were in the ascendancy at that point.
It did, yeah. It's the header that you taught. Always taught to try and go back across the goalkeeper, and he did it to perfection. But I think it's a really good point in regards to, we forced a mistake. It was obviously an error from Adai. I think it's incredibly harsh, though, that he was hauled off at half-time. Not injured, by the way, everybody. Hauled up, triple change at half-time by Dave Challoner, including the goalkeeper without an injury. You'd expect because of that mistake. I think that's a little harsh, personally, but
it was extremely harsh.
but hey, we'll talk about it in a moment. I would just like to kind of point out that this links into the second half a little bit, but Stockport were wanted to play out from the back. They've done it a lot this season. They're good at it. I think we could almost discount Birmingham because they are a level above League One, really. So yes, of course, they did it kind of effortlessly. Put your teeth in, Chris. Effortlessly. But Stockport are a well above average team at this level, and well above average at that particular task in terms of keeping the control and having those kind of completions deep in their area, or in their half, should I say. But I think sometimes you have to credit us. Our press was outstanding. Again, I think it's almost a standard for us now, but it was outstanding. And with the amount of times we won the ball back, High was great, or at least forced errors, forced turnovers, forced the ball going out of play, so we had a throw-in or a free kick or a corner. Although it was really good. So it was kind of coming. A goal off that sort of thing was coming. And of course, once Tendai picked up the ball, he still had a bit to do. He seemed to have quite a lot of time to make his mind up what he needed to do, which is obviously fortunate. And once he did, it was a pinpoint cross, great header by Ben. Something I didn't notice at the time, but Gary mentioned in his write-up, which I think was really interesting, is he noticed that Ben went straight in the goal to pick the ball up to go again because he kind of smelt blood, thought we're on the ascendancy. As you mentioned, we were on the ascendancy at that point. Let's go and get another one. And you're right, we were unlucky not to be 2-1 up at half-time. But I think there's a talking point here because the big talking point, of course, is Bailey Cadamarteri's run of the whole length of the pitch. But before that, what led to the corner that he intercepted was, of course, quite a big talking point and a potential penalty shout for Stockport County with Louis Barry colliding with Sean Rowan. What are your thoughts on that bit before we talk about what happened off the corner?
Well, I think I said at the time, because somebody was watching it and put a clip in our Discord of the incident. And I think my first response was, well, it's not a foul. You could see that would be very easy for the referee to give. However, I think Sean Rowan has got a very faint touch on the ball and may have even been slightly outside the area with the initial contact. However, I think what led to both of the players being down was George Wicken's momentum coming in and
smashing
taking both of them out. But if that went against us, I would be, or if it was at the other end of the pitch, rather, I would be livid if that's not given. However, I think he got enough of the ball, even though it was a very faint touch, to not have a penalty given against us. And you're going to turn around and tell me we got away with one, aren't you?
Not sure, to be honest. Maybe, but I'm kind of on the fence a little bit. But I think there's a couple of things at play here. Firstly, I think it was Ethan Hamilton that was dispossessed. Not really his fault. He was kind of crowded out a little bit, but then we were caught chasing, weren't we? And then Louis Barry, who, by the way, had a quiet afternoon up until that point and continued to have a quiet afternoon. Undoubted talent. But I think there's one small thing here which maybe played against him because he'd been a moany little bastard up until that point. And it's the boy who cried wolf, isn't it? Sometimes, ultimately, we almost look at referees and the opposition as pantomime villains or robots at times. They're human beings. We're all going to be affected by these things.
Yeah.
And he was a little bit of a soft touch at times. And I think him going down there.
There was a penalty shout. There was a shout a few minutes earlier as well. Let's not forget. They had a penalty shout earlier, which was never a penalty
in a million years. And he just lost his temper then. So I think, he was just petulant at times. He's a great player and he's been brilliant this season. And I don't want this to become me kind of jumping on here and going, you're a good player, did badly. But I just think that does absolutely play into a referee's mindset. When it is tight, because you think, if it was us, you'd be screaming for a penalty. Looking back, there's a little bit in it. It kind of is coming together, but it's come from the wrong side of him. Is it just inside the box or just out? Have I got to make a big decision about a potential red card? If it's a massive flashpoint. So just to kind of go, it's a corner actually. When it was that player that went down really softly and screamed in my face 10 minutes ago. I think human nature maybe makes you think, I'm not 100% sure, so I can't give it. So corner.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, a corner normally is a threatening position to be in. If you're an attacking team, it's great to have a corner.
Yep.
Unless you knock it short and Bailey Cadamarteri nicks in front of it and then runs the whole length of the pitch and does everything right. So many similarities between that and the Jovan McCarmel one a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Or Jovan Shorley,
Yeah. And did everything right. Showed great pace. Dare I say, it's basically a Joe Taylor style attack, wasn't it? This is exactly what we saw from Joe.
I mean, nobody was catching him. Nobody was catching him, were they?
He made the right decision with the finish to clip it across the goalkeeper. And it goes just wide. What a damn shame.
Yeah, I mean, if that would have gone in, I think the place would have erupted, and so would have the Stockport fans. Just because they've gone from a penalty that we would claim if it was ours to conceding within the space of 30 seconds. But no, really, really unfortunate. And I think it just shows that the intent was there. And like you said, that's how we want to play. Like, we'll hit teams on the break if we can. But I think there's a lot more to our game than that.
Yeah, however, I think that's a good point. We're great on the break, we're great on the press, but also in possession, we had a lot more control in this game than we have had in previous weeks. Even Crawley, when we had a lot of the ball, didn't always feel massively under control, didn't feel massively kind of, I suppose, planned or coordinated. It was a little bit hot potato at times. This just felt really, really well structured, really composed in possession. Now, I think there's a lot of people I've seen have said that we didn't go as long as often. You wanted to make this point yourself, didn't you? Didn't go as long as often. And I personally got no issue with us going long at times. It's when it's the right decision, when there's space to play into, or this place in front of the back four to knock down into. I think sometimes we have been guilty of doing it too regularly or maybe too soon. But I just felt we had a lot more control playing out when the time was right. Yesterday as well.
I think the thing is as well, when you are playing, when you are wanting to play long, it helps when you have the likes of Lewis Montsma and Sean Rowan when he's on form. And I think I was chatting to you, it was either Friday or Saturday, we were talking about this and saying that even in the Crawley game, you could see when Sean Rowan's playing a ball, 40 yards, it's landing on the chest of one of our players who's sprinting into the space. And that's the kind of long ball that I don't mind. And I think I even said to you at one point, would you rather have, and this is absolutely no disrespect to the legend that is, by the way, would you rather have Sean Rowan delivering balls like that out from the back, across the field to land on the chest of somebody, or Grant Brown?
Yeah, exactly. It's a great point. Yeah, I mean, in the modern day, of course, and in the role he plays, obviously Sean Rowan. I love Grant Brown. We all love Grant Brown. It's a very different
absolutely no disrespect to Grant whatsoever.
Than it was then. But you're right, though. You're right. I think Sean's passing is actually underrated. He's had the most successful long passes out of any player in our team this season. I think that says quite a lot. But ultimately, was going in at halftime 1-1. Could have been a different scoreline. There were a couple of flashpoints that could have made it different. But overall, it was a really positive half of football from us. It was a very entertaining game of football as well, just from a purely a neutral perspective. Great game. My manager, if you like, Dean, who came on our Fantasy EFL show a couple of weeks ago. Dean is the chap who works for Sports Interactive, so the people that make the Football Manager video game. He's basically my boss, so he oversees the whole of the EFL. He was at the game yesterday as a neutral. He has to kind of go and watch various teams throughout the season. It was yesterday that he was there, so he was a neutral. I caught up with him after, and he said that was one of the most entertaining games I've seen all season. And so that's nice, isn't it? As Lincoln fans, we thought it was good. It's always nice to kind of hear it from a neutral's perspective, and he thought it was a really entertaining game, really strong performance as well. So going in at half time, I just think that goal was just lifted so much pressure, didn't it?
Yeah,
so much pressure.
I didn't think we were going to in any danger of losing it at that point. Like, you go in, we've scored. We've nearly scored a second. We've nearly gone in 2-1 up. I didn't think there was any danger at all of us losing the game. And then, look, as you said, Stockport made 3 changes, including the keeper. I think that's really incredibly harsh. But I think it maybe played into our hands a little bit, because we came out and we got control of the game nice and early in the second half. We didn't really let go of it. I felt like there were so many positives about the way that we set about the second half, particularly compared to Tuesday. I suppose it doesn't hurt things that we didn't concede within 30 seconds.
Yeah, that generally helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I thought the movement was excellent. There was at any point, it felt like when somebody had the ball, it felt like there were at least 2 options for them available. Whereas sometimes this season, that's not necessarily been not been the case, where the movement hasn't been quite as fluid as we'd maybe like to see. It felt like there was at least 2 options for everybody when they were on the ball. And then that kind of led to a bit more of the sort of on-the-floor football, which people have been clamouring for, I suppose. And a lot of the sentiment that I've seen is people saying, oh, look what happens when we get the ball on the floor. We played a lot better football yesterday. And I think there was just a combination of everything. And maybe it seemed to swing a little bit more in towards, getting the ball on the deck and playing it short, as opposed to those long sweeping balls. And I don't know, maybe it was just that you noticed it more, because we still played the long balls. I mean, Lewis Montsma was, well, we'll come on to Lewis Montsma, but yeah, he was pinging it about like he always does, as was Sean Rowan. And I think when you've got those 2 in the team, you've got so many options. and they're both really, really good at what they do. But everything just seemed to work together in harmony yesterday. And then, of course, it led up to what will probably be one of the most simple and straightforward corner routines that you're ever going to see. But if you do the simple things right, everything else will fit into place.
Well, Dave Chandler made that pretty clear in his press conferences that Lincoln are a team that just do the simple things really, really well. But we know that because that's something that it's written on the wall at the training ground. The brilliant basics, isn't it? Do the basics brilliantly, then add to that. So it's something that's part of our kind of identity, I suppose. But I think there was a big change at halftime. You mentioned the 3 changes from Stockport, but it wasn't just that they made like for like changes. They massively changed their style as well. They brought Carl Wooten on. It was very much a target man. I was surprised to see him not start, actually, but he came on, offered a very different type of threat. They just effectively abandoned playing out from the back in the second half, which they were doing a lot in the first half. And we've credited ourselves in regards to how well we nullified that. And I know that Stockport that's been a real fixture of their season. It's something that's normal for them. So for them to actually go as long as often as they did in the second half, I think is credit to us because we forced them to change their style. It obviously meant we couldn't press as high, but that's it's a credit to us, isn't it? It's almost a compliment to us when you force the opposition to change so dramatically. But the corner, it looks simple. It ain't as simple as it looks. A great ball in, firstly by Don Jeffries, who, by the way, was my man of the match yesterday.
He was superb.
Absolutely superb. I think he's one player I really want to talk about later. But great ball in, but also it looks like Bailey's got a free header. And obviously he does have a free header. He's still got a lot to do, by the way. Gets up really well, leaps really high, really good, powerful header. However, our setup is really smart because he's not the biggest player on the pitch. It's unlikely he's normally going to be the target, or at least from a defensive team's setup. So I looked at this quite closely. And basically, because of how we used various blockers and also used a decoy at the back post, at no point in the build-up to the corner coming in was Stockport able to get a player directly on Bailey.
Well, you could have noticed that there were 2 defenders on 2 of our players, and Bailey was one of them. And Bailey ran around the back. I can't remember who the other player was, but Bailey just runs around the back of him. And then when the Stockport player goes to run to basically follow him, he runs into his own player.
Yeah. So, but because we've got our players in between. Yeah. The marker and the player that's our target. So it's just a smart corner routine to get him free, and then he knocks it in. Really random one that's compared it to, but it reminded me of when Harry Anderson scored a really good header away at Rotherham under Danny Cowley when we first came into League One. It's a very similar sort of thing. But yeah, of course, elation, justified goal, I would say, on the overall balance of the game up until that point.
Yeah.
And it was weird because going into this game, I was nervous. Was really buoyed by the first few minutes. We're all right here. Then conceded, so I was nervous again. And then we played brilliantly and got just a deserved goal, so I felt all right again. And then we scored, so I felt good briefly. And then I felt terrified that, we've got something to hang on to now. And this is a massive 3 points if we can hang on to it.
Yeah.
But I thought our performance from the point that we scored, because of course we did concede territory from that point. We did try and see the game out and manage it as well as we could from that point. And I thought our performance from that point of going 2 and up was just a really mature, professional management of the game to see out the victory. Of course, we needed George Rickers to make a big save at one point, but apart from that, there wasn't a lot else. And that's something that we can't have said on Tuesday night. Obviously, with a different scoreline because we were chasing it. But I think it looked like it. And Michael mentioned it in his post-match on Tuesday that it looked like a young performance, a bit of a naive performance at times. On Saturday, I thought it was a really professional, a really mature performance. And that's just another positive. So it's not just a good result. I think it was a really positive performance overall. And it was probably our most complete 90-minute performance of the season. I honestly do think that.
Well, I bumped into Gaz briefly as I was leaving the ground, and he sort of said, best performance of the season, that absolutely best performance of the season. Said, I know we hammered Mansfield, but to me that feels like the best performance. It's hard to disagree. Like when you stop a team playing that, I think it's probably fair to say Stockport have got playoff ambitions this season. You know,
absolutely.
You know, they're not spending as much as other teams in the division, but you know, they are wanting to be up there. I think we made them look really, really ordinary I don't think they look like a great team yesterday at all. I think we made them look poor. Well,
Worse
not
than they
poor.
are. Yeah, absolutely.
Poor.
And I think Dave Challenger's post-match press conference was probably a little bit harsh.
I think
To
it
be
was
honest,
harsh. Yeah.
I don't think they were anywhere near as bad as he made out.
No.
But I think that's credit to us because we made them kind of be removed from their identity a little bit.
Yeah.
So I certainly think we'll play. Well, we already have. We'll play worse teams than Stockport and lose. Obviously, we did against Crawley, but I think we'll play against teams that play worse than Stockport, and we might not get the result that we want because that's how football works. But Stockport were decent. I always felt, as much as they felt comfortable that we could keep them out, I never felt relaxed. I always felt that there's always not a chance because they've got good individual players. They've got a good system on the whole. So they're a good team. It's a good win.
Yeah, I think even saying that though, didn't necessarily feel relaxed, but I didn't particularly feel threatened. I don't think there was any major threat to it. Obviously, the Wicken save, you back him in that situation because we know what he can do. But yeah, I didn't feel like we were particularly under it for big spells. But let's look at the positives because there are many. If we get the negatives out of the way, first off, we don't know what the situation is with Ethan Arahan and his ankle. I think that's probably the negatives out of the way. Positives, Lewis Monsma just did not look like he'd missed a minute of football. And I think Gaz was saying it was like 50-odd games that he's missed since his injuries. And he just did not look like he'd missed a single minute. He was outstanding.
And it wasn't just that it was a like-for-like replacement and it was nice to have him back in the team. I really feel he added something. And a lot of our ability to play out from deeper positions with control came from the fact that we had Lewis Monsma in the team, who was capable of doing that with calmness, making good decisions. I'm not saying that Jacko and Hamer have done anything wrong. I really don't think they've really done much wrong at all. Lewis is a pretty unique centre-back in terms of our makeup, but he absolutely added something that's allowed us to be able to have that control playing through the pitch. And I thought he was absolutely outstanding. Didn't put a foot wrong defensively, but he was really in possession that I noticed that he added something that had been missing. I think you don't realise it's missing until Lewis Monsma comes back in the team and you go, oh, we've missed this. And I was just delighted because he looked exactly like the Lewis Monsma that we all remember. And I didn't know if we was ever going to see that again because, it's in massively rotated teams in the EFL Trophy that he's made appearances in so far. And he's obviously, one cameo appearance, I think, in the league apart from that.
Yeah.
We hadn't really seen him in a dare I say, a proper match.
Yeah.
And he's
to be fair,
got 90 minutes as well, which is brilliant.
That was what I was going to come on to. The fact that he got a full 90 was a genuine surprise to me. I thought, he'll get an hour. But yeah, the fact that he start to finish was excellent. And, the folks on Radio Lincolnshire were saying that he didn't look like he'd played for a full 90 minutes. He didn't look like he played for 10 minutes. He just came off and he was just normal. Although, fair play to him for somehow managing to drop an F-bomb on Radio Lincolnshire in his post-match interview. He said, the guys who came on in brilliant. Thought, Lewis, you're a hero. But yeah, other positives, Dariqua was absolutely superb again. I still think I'm with Charlie in him being the signing of the summer. He's just been phenomenal. I refuse to believe he's 32 as well. I absolutely refuse to believe that. He, getting an assist, nearly getting a goal. I think it proved he wasn't a striker. Dom Jeffries, as you mentioned, I thought he was absolutely fantastic. And we've got a couple of comments as we're live. Richard's saying so many candidates for man of the match yesterday: Connor, Ethan Hamilton, Dom Jeffries, Tendai as ever, and of course the returning Lewis. Flossie said so many to choose from for man of the match. Yeah, it was very hard to pick one yesterday, and of course Ben Bailey too. For getting
I think
goals.
That's the big thing, isn't it? Is 10 of our 10 goals have come from our strikers so far this season out of 12 games. That's a positive. So they're shared around a little bit, which maybe makes it feel that we're lacking in that. I think Michael's comments going into the game and regarding his front two maybe showed that we know that they do so well out of possession, but he wants a little bit more from them in possession. But He
it's something
started
that,
Ben House and Bailey Cadamartru today. They both scored. Against Leyton Orient, he started Freddie Draper and Jovo Makama. They both
yep.
scored. So things are looking all right. But I have to say, you mentioned positives. There's loads. I think we need to move on at some point. But
Oh, yeah.
Bailey Cadamartru's best overall performance in the Lincoln City shirt. He's scored already, which is great. He's offered a threat at times, but it was his most complete performance in the Lincoln City shirt. And it was great that he capped it off with a goal. I think that was massive for him. Rico starting, tiring towards the end, but obviously, put your teeth in again, Chris. Jesus Christ. But offering some real balance on the left-hand side just massively helped us. Lewis, we've already mentioned. Ethan Hamilton having to come on early and getting probably longer than we expected him to, did brilliantly. Conor McGrandle slotting in the holding midfield role, which we thought was irreplaceable. I'm really confident now that if Ethan is out, we obviously hope he's not, but if he is out for a little while, I think we're going to be okay. But for me, I think I really do, and you mentioned Tendai, of course, as well. But I think Dom Jeffries absolutely needs to be spoken about here because he's been quietly going about his business, putting in really consistent performances for weeks now in different positions. He's played 2 games back-to-back in central midfield now, and he was one of the, probably only him and Deritka really that took any credit out the full 90 minutes from Tuesday. For me, he was my man of the match yesterday in a game where there was lots to choose from. Obviously got an assist, but actually had 5 key passes. So he created 5 shots. That's basically a key pass is a pass that he knocks in that ends up in a shot. Basically, anything that would have been an assist if the shot ended up going in. That's what a key pass is. 5 of those. So it was six chances created. He didn't get tackled once. He won it back 6 times as well.
Well, no,
it was an outstanding performance. And he just goes about his business quietly, doesn't he? And I just think he is pushing Tendai very closely for signing of the season so far because I think he's not a player that I expected to play as much as he has. He's not a player I expected to see start as often as he has. And he has been really consistent. He's been a bit like a Sam Habigan in a way, in that just 7, 8 out of 10 every game. This game was a 9 out of 10 for me from him. But in every game he's played, he hasn't really looked out of place at any point. So I think Dom Jeffries deserves a special mention amongst many players who deserve a mention from Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, Dom Jeffries was mentioned in our Discord as Bozzy 2.0. And I think, it's a comparison that was based on yesterday, I think was very fair. But look, we are 42 minutes in nearly, and we have just finished the game. So, we will take a very quick ad break for those listening, for those watching. Then we'll say hello, but we'll see you in a second.
Yes. For those watching, hello. I need to find my Northampton notes. I don't know where they've gone. they were here.
I can fill for a second.
I literally had them here. I don't know where they've gone.
Fill.
Bear with.
So I'll just
here we go.
while we're here. Andy's in the chat. How are we doing, Andy? We have
obviously that, ladies and gents.
Richard's in the chat. He says, "Are you live?" Obviously, that was fairly early on because Steve has replied with "Yes, they are." Johnny Walker's finished his last broadcast, so I'm all ears now. Flossie says, "My first game back since an accident in August, and what a result to welcome me back. Seeing Monsma back in his full game is fantastic news, but the overall result sent me home very happy." Well, hope you're all feeling better after your accident, Flossie. Steve Race has said, that one. No comment. And then just Evans to go. Harrison says, bit confused with the Barry dive. If it's not a foul, surely he has to get booked for diving.
I felt that actually at the time, to be honest, but I think that has a lot to do in regards to how he was then treated on the big talking point leading up to the potential penalty shout. So maybe it played into our hands in that regard that he was a petulant little sod in that moment.
Richard, credit to Stockport. They wanted to play football too. Always quick to recycle the ball. Steve agrees, and I did bring this up, but we were talking. Special mention to Sean for the run to get the corner for the second goal. And Ian says that Dave Chandler was fuming in the post-match.
He was, I watched that post-match press conference, and he was. I think, like I said, we said earlier, I think it was. I understand no one likes losing. It's only the second game they've lost all season, but they've only actually won one in their last 9, I think now. So it's not been a brilliant run for them in terms of results. Really feeling a little bit of the pressure. He's not a manager that's used to losing either. He's been a very successful manager so far. So that winning mentality comes from somewhere. They'll be great. They'll be fine this season. Stockport. They'll be a playoff chasing team, I think. They're pretty similar to us, I would say, in a lot of ways. But it's good for us, isn't it?
Indeed, it is. Right. So we will come back in from the ad break in 3, 2, 1. And there we go. Thank you to whoever has sponsored the podcast this week through whichever adverts we have broadcast. So, obviously, Tuesday night, we've got another game. They're coming thick and fast, Chris. We welcome Northampton to the Bank on Tuesday night. Now, at the time of recording, I currently do not have a preview. We're due to record that a little bit later on this evening, so check out the YouTube channel for that. But Northampton, I think quite a few people thought they'd struggle a little bit this season, find themselves in 17th. They've got 3 unbeaten in the league, but they had previously lost 3 on the bounce. I think before that, they'd only won 2 in the league before that as well. So bit of an up and down season for them so far. Ironically, they drew 1-1 against Stockport last week, and then they beat Crawley 3-0 yesterday. So it possibly a bit tough to predict, particularly than usual. Well, tougher than usual, I'd imagine. But it will give you that perfect, that's football meme where you've got us, Crawley and Stockport and Northampton, and then it will be a myriad of different results if we get one on Tuesday night. So, what have you got for us on Northampton? I mean, it looks like they try and play it through the middle a little bit and have plenty of long shots on goal, try and pepper the keeper. So is that what we can expect, do you reckon?
I don't know. If that's really what I've seen, if I'm honest with you, mate, that will knock you down. It's just, I think that's been the case in the last 2 or 3 games. They're on their best run of the season so far. They've won 2 of their last 3 games and drew the other. And I think there is a lot to be said, though, as to who they have had their results against in those last those wins. They beat Crawley, and it always feels a bit silly, kind of saying, "Oh, that's an easy game then," because they beat us 3-0. But we beat ourselves 3-0, really, in a way. Yeah. Crawley were not a good side. We looked at the Birmingham and go, well, yeah, they're a great team. And even looking at Stockport, we're looking at, there's some really good elements of their team with great result for us. Crawley are not a good side. And but they did beat them. There's no denying that Northampton are a better side than Crawley were. They beat them comfortably. They drew Stockport, as you mentioned, and they beat Leyton Orient in the last 3 games. So good run, but in terms of the results they've picked up results against teams you would expect them to. Northampton, I expect them to struggle. I was one of the people that did expect them to be battling for the bottom 4, sorry, not top 4. And I still think that's the case, to be honest. So they are only 4 points behind us, by the way, in the league, despite being 17th and us being up in, I think, 9th now, 8th, something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't pay a lot of attention to the league table at the moment, but they're only 4 points behind, so they're not actually that far away. But there are some quite big differences in the 2 teams. Now, they do have some decent individuals. I'm going to touch on individuals in a moment. But I think there's 2 things to look at here. What can we expect in regards to how will they look in terms of lineup, tactics, shape, etc.? And then what do they do when they're in that lineup and in that shape? What can we expect to see from them? What sort of threats do they offer? Where do they compare to other teams in the league in terms of certain things? So firstly, I'm pretty confident they're going to play a back 4. They've only played a back 3 once this season, and that was against Wrexham, in which they lost 4-1. They've played 2 up top 3 times. And they've lost 2 of those games. So I'm expecting to see them play 1 up top, a back 4, and then depending on how they organise that midfield will depend on many, many different things. Thank you, Richard. You're right. We're on 21, they're on 15. I just can't add up. They're literally the numbers I've written down, and for some reason I thought that added up to 4.
Well,
there we go. We're all human, aren't we?
That's why I finished above you in Taskmaster, Chris.
Correct. Yes, correct. I was so bad at that, by the way. It's brilliant day, Taskmaster. I was shit at it. Anyway, so I expect them to be a back 4. They sometimes, in possession, morph into a back 3 at times, but ultimately, when we've got it, it's going to be us against a back 4, and I like that because we played 2 up top, and to play 2 up top against 2 centre backs, man for man, particularly when we play high wing backs, which we have been recently, I think that offers a real threat and asks a lot of questions defensively from an opposition team. So that's kind of what I can expect in terms of shape. Now, in the last 3 games, they're PPDA. So this is the passes allowed per defensive action. So it's basically how many passes do they allow the opposition to have before they try and win it back, or they're able to win it back. It's up at 15.6, which is by far the highest in League One. So they're quite passive. They're more than happy to let the opposition have the ball in their defensive third. So I can expect us to have a bit of the ball in our defensive third and be able to play out a little bit more than maybe we have been able to against other sides. So the question is, can we break them down? I think is going to be the question in that regard. But I think they're going to allow us to have the ball, and they're going to try and be as solid as possible behind it. Now, about this time last year, actually, I was a little bit concerned about Lincoln City's style and underlying numbers under a Mr. Mark Kennedy. So even despite a strong start to the season in terms of results, performances maybe weren't as ideal. I thought, how did we compare to our oppositions in lots of metrics? As you guys have heard me say hundreds of times before, looking at one number in isolation doesn't tell you a whole story, but looking at a whole picture of them does tend to paint quite a clear picture. So I thought, let's have a little deep dive into Northampton and where are they as a team in lots of metrics. And we're in these metrics that I'm going to share about top 10 for most of them on average. So they've got the 23rd highest, so the second worst amount of XG created. So in terms of quality of chances that they're, or either amount of chances or quality of chances is low. Their XG per shot is 19th. So it means that the quality that they're creating isn't great. Yet their XG against is the 18th worst. So they don't create a lot. The quality of their chances aren't great because you mentioned that they pepper the keeper. So that a lot of the shots they have are from outside the box. They don't create a huge amount from inside, but they don't actually have that many shots. And the shots they do concede tend to be of higher quality. Similar to us, quite low in possession. They're 21st. Shots against per 90, 5th worst in the league. They lose the ball the second most amount of times out of anyone in the league. They have the 4th worst number of passes into the final third. Lowest for smart passes, lowest for progressive passes as well. So all kind of attacking metrics, pretty poor. So if you're looking at these without knowing where they are in the league, without knowing what results they've picked up, you're just looking at these numbers. What that tells us is they're not offering a consistent threat going forward. Now we know football is a 40-year-old game, which means they're probably going to score 3 goals on Tuesday now. But can we expect them to create a huge amount from open play? No. All 3 goals that they scored against Crawley came directly or indirectly from set pieces. So, and that was all 3 of them were really crap defending by Crawley, by the way. It wasn't really that they were massively smart. So I don't want this to come across as too negative against Northampton, but the underlying numbers suggest that we are a step above them in terms of quality. So they remind me quite a lot of Mark Kennedy's side, to be honest, in terms of style, in terms of underlying numbers. But also we know that Mark Kennedy's sides were hard to break down. And they were capable of picking up positive results because of that. So I don't want this to be too, oh, they're crap, we're going to win comfortably. I think it's going to be a tight game. But if we can break them down, I think we can hold them out. The first goal will be really crucial for us. If we can get the first goal, we should be okay. Cameron McGeehan has got 4 goals from midfield. So that's a threatening player there. Tariq Fosu plays for them. He is brilliant at this level for Oxford before his move to Brentford. They're the only players in their team that have scored 2 goals or more. Everyone else has scored 1 or 0, so they haven't really got a key kind of attacking focal point. Who is a goal scorer? Tom Eaves tends to start up front for them at the moment.
So that's
and that's you say kind of it, really.
I was going to say, you say that almost mirrors what you said about Kennedy's Lincoln, because we didn't have a focal point of a goal scorer. It was something that I kind of thought was a bit of a strength of ours over the past couple of seasons, where we wouldn't have, we're relying on such and such to score 20 goals. Obviously, Joe Taylor helped massively towards the end of last season. But prior to that, we didn't rely on a single player. And I think every outfield player that was available for us last season scored, bar maybe 1.
Indeed. Yeah, it's not necessarily a negative to have one player scoring loads of goals. If you can spread it around your team and everyone's contributing, that can absolutely be seen as a positive. But I think in terms of who's a threatening player to look out for, as a striker, there isn't really a goal-scoring centre forward yet. Cameron McGeehan has scored a few from range, and that's kind of it.
Well, there is another striker there at the moment, which who I believe we believe at the moment is injured. I will clarify this on the preview. But yeah, somebody that I think we've said potentially has the best agent in football. In Callum Morton is currently playing for Northampton. And what I find strange about that one is that Callum Morton is playing for Northampton, but his parent club is Salford City, who are in the league below. Now, I can't think of a time that I've seen a player go on loan to a team in the league above.
Yeah, only with towards the end of a transfer window, a player that's destined to play at a higher level, but they can't get a permanent deal done, so they do a loan to buy thing. A bit like what's his bloody name? The guy that went from Peterborough to Coventry in January, and then came back on loan to Peterborough for the second half of the season.
But
don't tell a lie. No, don't tell a lie. That's what I'm on about. That's bollocks.
I'll say that's the
other way around. Yeah,
that's
you're absolutely right.
With
it
Sean
is
Raggett for us.
Yeah, incredibly rare. Incredibly rare. Strange, because Salford are hardly lighting up League Two either. So it's a strange one. It is a strange one. He, of course, was at Northampton many years ago, was Callum Morton, scored 5 goals in 9 appearances for them. So maybe there's an element of a connection there. But he certainly hasn't been a prolific player. For Salford, didn't score a single league goal in 27 league appearances last season for them. So
he scored one.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah, he scored 1 for Northampton since he's been back. 5 appearances, 2 off the bench. So, yeah.
I wouldn't worry too much about Callum Morton. If he does play, I'm not massively concerned. We think he's injured at the moment. Hasn't played since the 5th of October. So I imagine he's injured at the moment. But wouldn't worry too much. We know Tom Eaves can be a threat at this level. Kind of good at bringing people into play. They have some good individuals. They've obviously got, we mentioned McGeehan, who's one to look out for. Fosso's one to look out for. Good on the ball. Plays wide left generally. Centre-back Guthrie is generally pretty good. Pretty strong, pretty robust, but does have a bit of a weakness when he's being kind of dribbled directly at. He's actually only in the 4th percentile in League One for that particular metric. Gets dribbled past a lot compared to other centre-backs, despite being dominant at other parts of defending. So that might influence selection for us on that side of the defence. Tends to play left of the back too. So that's interesting because he's one of their higher rated players on FotMob, yet he has that very definite weakness. So interesting. It's an interesting one. I would like to feel confident for this one, to be honest, particularly off the back of Tuesday night, off the back of Saturday, sorry.
So off the back of Tuesday night?
Yeah, what am I on about? If we play like we did on Saturday, and there's no reason for me to believe that we can't, then we should win this with all of the numbers, and also what we've seen with our eyes would suggest that we've got more than enough to get past Northampton. But of course, football is a funny old game.
Indeed. Do we start with the 11 that finished the game on Saturday, or is it going to be too much for the likes of Lewis Monsma?
Great question. Don't know.
I would be very surprised. I'd be very surprised to see Rico Hackett starting, because he did look like he was starting to tire at the end of the game.
Yeah, Hamilton as well. I thought Hamilton was great, but he looked tired towards the end. Dom Jeffries looked really tired towards the end, but got a really good 90 minutes in because they put a lot of effort in. You know, there's a lot of running going into that, and we've played a lot of games recently, which requires rotation. However, we don't have a game on Saturday. We get a rest all the way through to Monday evening. So there is a bit more recovery time after Tuesday than is normal for a normal turnaround. So I really hope Lewis Monsma starts, because I think he, against a team that's going to allow us to have the ball deep, I think having the passing range that Lewis has and the really good decision making in terms of his pass selection, I think that's going to be quite a big factor in potentially being able to keep that control building out and not getting caught in behind on the break, because we've been able to play out with control. I think that he offered so much on Saturday with that, and my goodness me, how have we missed it? And as mentioned earlier, you don't realise you've missed it until you have it back again and go, oh my God, we have missed this so much. So I really hope he's back and is able to play. But again, it depends fitness-wise how that looks. I don't expect to see massive changes. I'd be more than happy to see Conor McGrandle starting in the holding role.
Yep.
I'm pretty happy with any of our midfield.
I think
options
we're
ahead
probably,
of that, to be honest. But I would like Dom Jeffries to be able to start just to back up a really good performance.
yeah, I think we're probably going to, I think we're probably going to see the same midfield that finished the game start the game.
I would be
Primarily
surprised
because
to
we
see.
won't see Ethan Arahan. I don't think. I think it's going to be too soon. Even if it is a mild knock, I don't think we're going to be seeing Ethan on Tuesday night, which is quite annoying because I put him in my fantasy EFL team. But yeah, so we won't. I doubt we'll see Ethan, which kind of suggests that we'll be going with the same midfield three that we had that saw the game out.
Oh, that saw the game out. So with Jack Mullen in there.
Yeah.
I was going to say I can see Jack Mullen getting a start here, and that's not because anyone played badly on Saturday, but I think one weakness of Northampton's team, particularly in the back line, is being ran at directly.
Yeah,
Jack Mullen's
very good at
good at that. Yes, and statistically, kind of it highlights that as our most successful kind of dribbler so far this season as well. So I can expect to see him in there potentially with Jeffries, potentially with Hamilton. So kind of real hard-working kind of box-to-box midfielder that gives Mullen a little bit more license to kind of impact the game slightly higher up the pitch. I would expect to see Cadamartri and House probably both start again after both putting in superb performances. Fred did well when he came on, but I liked both of them.
Michael did say that Jovan may be fit for Tuesday.
Yeah,
so
I
whether
imagine
he plays a bit part, or he starts, I don't know.
I would say bench if he's there, and then he can be a really kind of key impact player. I just think it's a bit of a risk from a start if he's just come back from a little bit of a layoff, and also incredibly harsh to Belly Cadamartri and Ben House again, particularly because of the
both
strengths. Well, yeah, that, and also the makeup of Northampton's backline, in that they tend to be quite dominant physically, but weak with the ball on the deck, kind of around the sides and being run at. So House is good at that. Cadamartri's got a threat in behind, and of course, if that's not working, then we've potentially got Jovan to come on. We know we've got Freddie to come on to offer a different type of threat, which, let's be honest, if you've been having to face your own goal and run in behind for 60, 70 minutes because Bailey Cadamartri and Ben House have been at your heels for that amount of time, and then you've got to try and defend Jovan Makama, then you're not going to have a very enjoyable evening as a centre-back if things go to plan. But Northampton certainly aren't going to be a light touch. I know the underlying numbers do suggest that we should have enough to beat them, but we said that about Crawley. So
that's very true.
Let's not get carried away. No. However, Saturday was a massive confidence boost. It was a performance to match the result. And as we said before, I think it was a performance of the season so far. It was a kind of a full 90-minute performance, really. And our reaction to some adversity was really positive as well. So I saw everything that I wanted to see on Saturday. And if we could do anything like that again on Tuesday, then we should be all right.
Yeah. I did want to just bring something back very quickly from Saturday, because just to kind of wrap it up a little bit, we almost saw everything that we wanted to see on Saturday. The one extra thing that I wanted to see on Saturday was a free kick given for the obvious holding, shirt pulling, and general housery that was going on around Freddie Draper when he came on.
Oh, I can't remember which defender it was. Yeah, but that one where Fred got a free kick given against him.
Yes, because he had his shirt being pulled.
Criminal.
By a player who... A player fell over holding Fred's shirt, and he falls to the ground, nearly ripping his shirt off, and he gets a free kick given against him.
However, that shows the impact Fred has, by the way. And he doesn't always get the credit he deserves, Freddie. He's a bloody nightmare to play against because he occupies defenders, and even if he doesn't get the ball, like, he's keeping a really often the strongest defender, physically strongest defender, out of the game because they have to deal with Fred's physical presence. And my goodness, did he put himself around in that kind of cameo appearance, broke up the game nicely. Obviously, would have been nice to win a free kick or two in our favour, but it still stopped Stockport getting any sort of momentum into the game. As mentioned earlier, I thought our maturity showed in that performance in the second half, particularly after going 2-1 up. Fred played a role in that. So,
although he did snap.
True. But understandable. I think it was understandable.
Literally every single time the ball came through, he was getting fouled. And then I think at one point he just had enough and threw the defender to the floor. I was quite surprised he didn't get booked, if I'm honest. But it was really good to see that because it's the passion. It's what people want to see. And we've said it. It felt like the complete performance on Saturday. Here is hoping that we have another complete performance at Sincil Bank under the lights on Tuesday night. Is it you and Gary on next Thursday?
Wednesday? I think so, yes. I think so. And then Gaz and I are, of course, away in Deutschland at the weekend.
Indeed.
So it'll be you and Charlie on that's interesting Sunday, but we'll
not have a game, and we will be previewing a game that is incredibly hard to preview because of statistics, lies, and damn statistics.
Yes, we'll have to.
We'll figure something out.
We'll figure something out. I think it's me and Gaz of the week, and then we'll let you know what's going on.
We may have a super special preview as well. We're not entirely sure on that. We're trying to work out the details on that, but we may have a very, very special preview for the Cheshire game.
Could be, if all goes well, that could be very exciting.
I'm very excited about that one. But we will see on that one. Hopefully, we'll hear back later on in the week. However, we will see you on Wednesday with Gaz and Chris. But until then, up the imps.
Up the imps.